Hello, everybody. My name is Christopher Demerizzi, also known as Demo. This is my first interview on my podcast. My podcast is called I Am Just Talking to Myself. The reason why it's called this, and I will definitely get into deeper description and discussions on this, but the reason why it's called this is because it's a habit that I have when I'm talking to other people. I tend to mirror a lot of conversations and reflect a lot of different things while I'm talking to people. The reason why I say I'm talking to myself is because every time we're talking to somebody, they may say something, do something, or be acting a certain way that I feel within myself as well, right? So if they're doing something and I feel that thing, whether I feel anger because I'm not doing this thing, or I don't feel no anger, I feel contentment, gratitude, happiness for that person, it's because a part of that experience that they're having is resonating with me. So as I'm talking to other people, I'm always talking to myself, giving myself the best advice, and I hope that these people can take those lessons forward. So without further ado, this is my first interview with David Donaldson, the Beast. One of my best, somebody closer to my heart than anybody else I've ever experienced in my life. We've grown a bond that's been insane. We met through the Bearded Villains, where we were at a camp out. And through this camp out, we ate some psychedelics, we had some good times. But at that time, I didn't know Beast was going through some pretty heavy shit. And through that conversation, through that talking to myself and talking to this gentleman, I was able to reflect some things and help him become more aware of parts of his life that he wasn't aware of. And throughout that experience, we've been able to grow together as brothers and reflect more and more and more. And the growth that I've had since this man's been in my life has been immense, immense, immense. I know that I've had quite a few impacts on his life as well. His family is very, very close to me. They mean more than most people can imagine. They mean a lot to me, because they let this man come and hold space for me and be a mirror to me, talk to himself while he's talking to me. This gentleman is an Army veteran. He is also a father, more importantly, of course, father and husband in life. He works at the VA where he's helping multiple veterans refocus their behaviors, refocus their ideas, work through medical issues, work through all kinds of stuff that veterans face. We all know that veterans are facing multiple things out in the world, and the VA is a little understaffed right now. There's a lot going on. But people like David are stepping outside of themselves and doing things that are against the norm to help veterans, to make them more aware of themselves so they can work on themselves, so they can become better versions, so they can grow, all of this. But on top of it, he's not just doing it for those veterans, he's doing it for himself too. He's going back and he's learning a lot more. He's listening to these veterans and he's resonating with them on levels that nobody has ever had before. So with that, he's been able to connect with veterans and help veterans, and he's told me so many stories of veterans, and I'm sure we're going to get into multiple conversations about this, but he's told me so many stories of multiple veterans that were going through things just unaware of themselves, and just through those conversations with David, with Beast, I'm going to be calling him Beast during this time, through their conversations with Beast, they've been able to overcome a lot of their life issues and at least be able to face those things with a little less fear, knowing that somebody like David's got their back. We all need friends like this in life. We all need people like this in life that are, we have those friends that are like, oh, you look like shit. Oh, your beard looks like shit. All that shirt needs to be wrinkled. But people like David that just come forward and are just like, hey man, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And just bring that love is an amazing thing, and I am honored to know him, and I am extremely proud of him and happy for him working at the VA, for everything he's doing, all the life changes that he's made, and the man that he is right now, and the guide he is in my life. So thank you, and without further ado, here's David Donaldson. How are you today, brother?
What is up, bro? I am I am honored to be your first guest on this. For me, it's well, you and I started 6 years ago, and here we are now.
Yeah.
And the crazy shifts that happen in life, and just the path that we walk is it's a hell of an honor to be here, bro.
Thank you. It's an honor for me. It's an honor for me to know you and to have you here on this recording as well. And it's been fun. It's been fun knowing you. It's been a fucking ride. We've done a lot of crazy things together. But all those crazy things have led us to a deeper version of ourselves. have gotten us to
Absolutely.
a point of being able to become more aware of certain things we do. And though, we might become aware of everything and not be able to change everything, but we work forward, we move forward. When
Hmm.
you're going through something and we talk, we try to provide those reflections for one another. We try to be there. So, I mean, yeah, it's fun, but it's also it's an important relationship in my life.
Hmm. It's
So,
we always talk about that iron sharpens iron,
yes.
but you add love on top of that, man.
Woo. And that's yeah, and that's like let's go ahead and run on that for a second.
Hmm.
Iron sharpens iron, but with love. And when you're thinking about iron sharpens iron, most of us think about like our father, tough love, our mom, tough love. So yeah, this person is trying to sharpen us so we can excel in life. And a lot of times, even though they're our parents, they're our family, they don't bring that love with it as much.
Hmm.
It's a little bit more stern, more disciplinary. But when you're able to, like you said, bring that love into the iron sharpens iron, like that compassion, like not just hey,
Hmm.
this is what you need to do, hey, this is what you need to do, but more receiving. Like you're a very big receiver, so you receive what I tell you, I hear you, I see you process it, and then you're like, all right, what am I going to say to myself? And then you start talking. And it's always
Hmm.
been something that's helped me in the aspect of feeling heard. I'm an intense person. This is something that's very well known within my circles. I'm a very intense person. So because I'm an intense person, here's the wooger. So because I'm an intense person, when I'm like trying to like reflect things to certain people, I tend to come off a little bit more abrasive than I might be, but it's just the excitement of seeing that there's a lesson that could be learned there in that moment.
Yeah,
How's that
that
resonate with you?
it resonates big because that energy wells up in you,
Yeah.
and when we talk about that iron sharpens iron, when I first met you, is that intensity came through, and I was just like, oh shit. Like, who did I just walk up on? I think I was looking for a haircut, if I'm not mistaken. But when we talk about adding that love, it's something I feel like we really stumbled upon and remembered along the way. You go back to talking about your parents and how we're raised with that, and there's so much of that that's fear based. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like they don't want us to do the same things that they made a mistake doing, or whatever the
Yeah.
case is. They want us
That
to
fear they're
learn that
passing
lesson
on to
before we
you.
have to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Before we go and have to learn the lesson the hard way ourselves. But
Yeah.
you add in that love, you talk about that presence, that space, that I don't think I have to go much further than that. Is that
Yeah.
space?
Yeah. And when we're talking about, and when we're just to, just to get into that a little bit, when we're talking about space, we've all gone through things where we felt a certain kind of way, and when we feel that kind of way, and we start kind of reaching out to people and being like, oh, I want to talk to somebody, I want to let it out a little bit, and you come across somebody who might be like, hey, just get over it, hey, it's gonna be okay. That the space that you're trying to find, they're essentially shutting down on you. So somebody
Hmm.
who creates that space leaves you open to talk about whatever you want without feeling judged, almost like unconditional judging is what
Yeah,
true safe space is.
yeah. It's completely open without judgment. And we talked about mirroring, right? I know we're going to be getting that further, but being able to be heard, being able to be authentically received is something that I think not enough of us have that space, that ability to reach somebody, to reach out to somebody that's going to be able to provide that, because everybody's stuck in their own shit,
Yeah.
right? And unfortunately, if we're not mindfully aware of where we're at, we are stuck in it. But when we're able to be in the moment with someone and holding that space, there's just so much. We talk about the iron sharpens iron. There's growth that comes from
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about reflections, like, and just as your podcast is named, right? I'm just talking to myself.
Yeah.
You start understanding that connectivity, and when you have these conversations, you're holding the space for folks. It's very shared, and it's
Yeah.
very sacred. It's very sacred, and I think where so much of the time it's always listening to answer, right? When we listen to somebody, we're always trying to think of a response. But when you're in the moment and you're holding that space with somebody, you're actually receiving, like what you talked about, digesting that information, and then being able to either provide a reflection or an answer or whatever the case is that's needed.
Yeah.
But that shared conversation, you've got something for me, I've got something
Yeah.
for you in it, and it's a gift. It's sacred.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's very, very important. Very, very important. Like, just the space that needs to be created. Like, everything that we're saying right now is ultimately, it comes down to how much are I know how much personally, but for me in my space with David, but how much when we're talking to people, and we're trying to open up and we're trying to find that safe space, like, how often do those other people, the receiving people, put their beliefs to the side? That's ultimately what how we start to create safe space. I have to put my beliefs to the side and essentially resonate and feel where you're coming from, right? I don't know exactly what you're going through because my life and my experience is different than yours, but I have to go into those feelings. Whenever I felt the way he's describing and going to that space to be able to better resonate with that person and create a better dialogue so you can talk about stuff, that's what that safe space is. And you, sir, have taught me what that safe space has meant in life for me. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. But it's so important. It's so important for people to be able to grow for themselves. It's an amazing thing. So I wanted to kind of I want to know where'd you grow up, man? Where'd you grow up? Although I know already, but let the listeners know where you grew up. When you joined the Army, where were you before you joined the Army?
So I was born in Pensacola, Florida. I grew up northwest of there in a sleepy little town called Cantonment, Florida. And that's where I was when I joined up with the Army Guard.
Word, heck yeah. And you were in Florida from baby all the way up to you joined the military? Cool. And what were some of your habits? What'd you do for fun when you were a kid?
Dude, I was a kid of the woods.
Hell yeah.
Run around outside, completely different than the location I'm at now in Phoenix. You can't really run around the desert outside as much unless it's cool outside.
The heat.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely had humidity down in Florida, as you know, being a Florida boy. But yeah, running around playing Army. That was my biggest thing. I was always in the woods. I was always hunting. I was always, trying to build forts and all this other stuff, and just like had kind of my own little world going on.
Okay. And did you do this like teenage years and everything?
I'd say teenage years, I definitely started getting more into, oh man, I got into anime and I got into video games a lot heavier, all kinds of stuff, right? Stop being outside quite as much.
Yeah.
Into my teenage years, but I was real big into art, big into music. But always outside as much as I could be.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Hell yeah, man. It definitely that resonates with me a lot as well, especially in my younger ages, riding bikes through woods, starting fires where I shouldn't have been starting fires, and all of that. And then when it's teenage, especially for us, because like Nintendo 64, Sega, like GameCube, all these different systems were coming out, so they were more accessible to people, so a lot more of us had them, and then our friends had them, for sure. I can definitely see that. So you joined the Army at the age of 17, 18?
yeah,
19?
17.
17 years
Yep,
old.
signed the dotted line between my junior and senior year of high school. I was an ROTC at the time in high school, so was definitely trending in that direction for military life anyway. So,
what was your biggest influence in wanting to join the military?
That's a deep question. So we're gonna get real. I needed to be bigger and stronger and faster, like the beast version of myself. I needed to become somebody that couldn't be hurt anymore. The main influence that I had for joining the military would actually, I mean, it started off with just movies, right? My dad was always watching war movies and everything like that, and he, I definitely kind of saw that life as something that would be interesting. Definitely get out of that small town, but also protecting myself. I went through a lot of abuse as a kid. A lot of physical, a lot of sexual abuse, and that went on for years. And so it really skewed kind of my view of number one, myself, but also the world. And I knew for me that if I could be all that you can be, right? For me, that would mean I wouldn't be getting hurt anymore.
Yeah.
And that for me is like the biggest drawing to the military was just that simple fact that, if I could become more than what I was and also get the hell out of the location that I was at, that,
Yeah.
And of course then, started the service mentality and everything else started coming out, especially when I joined ROTC in high school. That really set the tone, because I basically started off in freshman year and then graduated senior year as the battalion commander of the high school. So I really dove into it because I found that structure, being able to, dress a certain way and the way that I felt when I was wearing the uniform was like, what, I could get used to this life.
Yeah.
Right? I always knew that I wanted to be a fighter type, right? Because I wasn't taught how to fight growing up. I had to learn the hard way. Right?
Yeah.
And
so you don't, maybe not necessarily a fighter type, but a protective type.
Yeah, but mainly protecting myself at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as went into high school and started getting really into, that military way of seeing things, I was like, oh, this is a much bigger thing than myself. This is something I want to go help, others that are feeling like they're unable to protect themselves, started promoting this idea of kind of like the anti-bully in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the main reasons that I joined it, and it really shaped into, of course, country at that time. Being a part of, being able to serve, became so much of the identity that I held and created for myself in that time. And for that was, again, if I can be as big as I can be, as hard as I can be, as tough as I can be, as all of these different things, then I'm going to be able to help others find that. Maybe not for themselves, but at least be able to be that for them. So, kind of a long way of saying.
Not a long way. I mean, don't devalidate yourself.
Word.
You're explaining. There's more. We can go on and have a conversation about this for fucking 12 hours. And if you ever feel like you want to, I got you.
Oh,
But don't devalidate yourself. You were in a space where, things were happening to you. You felt unprotected. You found an organization, but even bigger than that, you found a family that was dedicated to protecting, that gave you the skills. So your spirit knew you weren't getting that from here. So I need to find these tools, these abilities here in this life now, so I can use these in the future. And though you may not have been thinking about it then, for your kids, for your wife, for your family, for being able to do what you can for your family, for your mom and pops now. Like, you were aware that you needed something to level up, and you took it upon yourself to do that. Which, like you said, happens to a lot of people. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of veterans out there that I've spoken to, that you've spoken to, that that experienced a lot of traumas in life as young kids. I myself was one of those. The first time I ever saw a weapon, I was probably like 4 years old, and I remember this vividly. I was probably about 4 years old, and we were walking into my house, me and my mom, after she picked me up from school, and here's this guy. Here's this guy with a knife inside of my house, sitting on my couch looking for my father. And a lot of us go through all of these different things, go through different experiences, whether it's, like you said, sexual things, physical abuse, whatever the case may be, mental abuse, all those different things. A lot of us go through that. And in society today, we're never learned to find those safe spaces, right? Because a lot of times those safe spaces offer that protection in a different way. So we're able to see in a different way. But you needed to protect your spirit, so you took it upon yourself for you to learn and do what you needed to do to make sure that you were ready for your future. That is a beautiful thing you did for yourself. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing.
And beautiful reflection, my friend. Thank you.
Sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's what this is about, bro. Hell yeah. So you join that military, that protective mindset, then that service mindset, the warrior mentality tends to take over, which happens to a lot of veterans too, right?
Yep.
That protective side without the love. Going back to that iron sharpens iron. Now we're going to do protectiveness with love, I think that's something we've definitely learned a lot about over the last few years. But at that time, that protection was just solely that. Like, I need to protect people. You loved everybody. You didn't know that, but you just wanted to protect people.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Definitely brought out, especially when I started learning about the Warriors ethos and, all of these different things that we learn, through that training, and even going back into freaking high school, right? Like, that stuff was instilled to me by a first sergeant that was in charge of our ROTC program. That dude is so dope. That reminds me, I need to reach out to Bob Grice. But anyways, that was the influence in high school, I think, that really pushed me into it, because I was like, holy crap, this is a man's man, right? Like, this dude was in friggin' Vietnam. He was a tanker.
It was like the vision of who you wanted to be, protective-wise.
Absolutely. He was big. It was so funny because he was a giant teddy bear, right? So he had that loving spirit about him, and so many of us, like, especially the guys, were just like, dude, this guy's freaking open. He's real with us, right? Like, he receives where we're at. He doesn't pass judgment, although he will scuff you up if you, to teach you a lesson, right? So, really seeing and meeting him, and he did so much for me in high school. Like, I was flunking out on freaking math my freshman year, and this guy comes in, talks to this crazy math teacher, Enola Hall. I remember this day, just beautiful freaking cherry Mustang she drove. But anyways, and they always hung out in the smoke back in the teachers' lounges when you could smoke back in the day, and they'd always go back there, and he smoked a pipe, and he got with her and got me into her freaking math class, and dude, like, after that, algebra was a cinch, right? Just because I needed to have that role in my life to receive me, see me where I'm at, be able to receive where I'm at in my understanding, and then be able to talk to me in a way that resonated with me, right? Like, so both of these people really kind of cemented that lovingness behind it, and I didn't even know it, but that's what I felt. That I can think about it back in that time. I was like, oh shit, I'm safe with these people.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm safe, but I'm also learning. I'm growing. I'm becoming who I want to be by emulating these people. I started understanding, if I emulate this, if I do that enough, that's going to become who I am. Right?
Those tools.
Yep.
Those tools. That's why it's so important to have these types of conversations, is because you're able to identify those tools within somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, he resonated with you, whatever the case may, he saw you, as you said. He gave you the space you needed. You didn't identify it maybe as love at the time, but you understood it was safety. It was something that you wanted for yourself in that space. So it's dope that you were able to have somebody like that around you during that time.
Yeah. Yeah, that was such a, like, whirlwind of a time too, because I was just coming from a private Christian school that I went through in middle school. So getting dialed in back into public school and then freaking flopping flat on my face basically my freshman year, flunking out classes and stuff, and all of a sudden meet these people and shit starts turning around.
That's
So
so
that's
beautiful.
yeah, and exactly what that is, man. Identifying now, knowing that I needed that love for myself, so that I could become that protector. They helped me cultivate that, and that's definitely something that, especially for Sergeant Grice, brought out in me. So,
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah. It's so important. Once again, you're able to, especially with what you do for work now, you're able to identify those things in the past, and through that identification of those things in the past, you can go into those feelings that you had within yourself at that time. Like, oh, it wasn't just this guy being a role model to me, it was what he was creating around me that helped me feel more as myself. That's super fucking dope, bro. Super fucking dope, man. I
yeah.
definitely can't. I'm very excited for you to reach out to him and have a conversation, because that's going to be a good time, especially now with the eyes that you have to see
Hmm.
and the heart you have to give.
Yeah,
Yeah, hell yeah.
it's gonna be a much
So,
different conversation.
oh yes. So, moving forward, I have a feeling we're gonna have a whole day of just kind of talking about the military as a whole. But I want to jump forward some, just so people can see where you were at post military, because that's the big thing, is that warrior ethos that we build up while we're in the military. Once we get out, now I'm a warrior, but I can't be a warrior anymore. I can't have this mentality. Now I have a family, I have kids, I need to take care of these things. The hardest thing for me was I'm a civilian.
Hmm.
How did that feel once you get out, and what were some of the things you were facing initially?
I'm gonna back up just a hair so I can, I think, answer that a little bit deeper.
Okay.
Coming coming home from a couple combat tours, right, and really at that point when I got a taste of civilian life, I wanted no part of it, right? Like I had found what I thought was my home. I had found my role. I
Your
was to
family.
continue. Yep, I was to continue being that warrior. And even though I had been, I'd gotten married right after my second tour, I was trying to get back on another deployment. And I was even training up guys to go and everything like that, as an NCO. And I get pulled into the commander's office and over at Medhold here in Arizona, or not Medhold, Med Detachment. The guys that make sure we're all good to go for our deployment, right? And I remember the major kind of sat me down and he's like, Sergeant Donaldson, where are you trying to go? And I was like, back to Iraq with my boys, sir. And he's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you've got some things going on that, you need to get checked out before I sign off on you going anywhere. And I was like, well, permission to speak frankly, sir. And he was like, go ahead. And I was like, who the fuck are you to tell me where I can and can't go? He's like, well, I'm the officer that signs off on your deployment orders and picks up my medical file and puts it on the desk. And he's like, you got a lot of stuff you need to take care of before I sign that dotted line. He's like, go to the VA, get checked out, and see if they'll sign for you. Which at the time I had no idea that that's not how it worked. But
Yeah.
what did I know? I was a guardsman coming back from combat, just trying to go back to combat, right?
Yeah.
So I started getting involved with the VA and everything like that, and then I started getting all these appointments and finding out, oh, I've got these diagnoses like PTSD and traumatic brain injury and all this other stuff. My back, my knees, my neck, shoulders. Everything's jacked up.
Plethora.
The plethora of injuries. Not to mention stomach issues, but I came back to that commander and basically gave him kind of the update and stuff, and he was like, you're not fit for duty. You definitely can't be an infantryman anymore, much less a soldier. He was like, I'm going to go ahead and start pushing the medical process for you. And I was like, what does that even mean? And I remember walking out of that office and just crying. Mm-hmm. Like, number one, I couldn't be oh yeah,
being told that you were not allowed to be the warrior that you are.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that shit set in. I called my readiness NCO, called my wife, and I was just like, oh my God, what the hell am I going to do? And that started a spiral. And that spiral took me down, like basically went into the job market. I was like, well, if I can't be a warrior in the Army, I'm going to be a warrior on the streets, right? So I tried to be a cop, tried to be a fireman. Couldn't pass the physical on the fire side and couldn't pass the mental on the cop side of the house. And that took me even further down. And started, just being a bouncer on Mill Avenue in the middle of Tempe, Arizona. And, that's basically, I was like, well, what can an infantry guy do here in civilian world? They're like, well, you can be a cop, you can be a fireman, you can be security, or you can be a trashman.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, word. So I guess I'll go be security.
Just to pause you real quick, just to add something before we go into that spiral. For everyone listening, we know people that are going through all kinds of different things. For me personally, I grew up with my father selling a lot of cocaine, selling large amounts of drugs. So as I grew up in life, drugs are normal to me. So as I'm around people that are doing drugs, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me. I was used to it. This is the life that I had lived. When I started wanting to change my life, it felt weird because I was this drug addict, I was this drug dealer. That was the mindset I was in. Stepping into a reality where I was looking more for positivity within myself and personal growth within myself, I had to face that other part of myself, the drug dealer, the homelessness, all the shit I was doing. I had to face that version of myself. And what David is talking about right now, what Beast is talking about right now is like, a lot of veterans, a lot of military personnel, we go into the military and we get conditioned. We get conditioned to be a certain way, to be what the military needs us to be. And our whole time while we're in the military, that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. That's you become that identity. You become that MOS. You become that uniform. You become those things. And now, David had an officer that was basically like, hey, you can't do this anymore. So now his identity as a warrior, as this person that protects, is being challenged. It's being challenged. Now at that time, David didn't know what to do, but in those moments, we got to figure out, okay, what part of this warrior mentality can I use and take forth with what I'm facing right now, right? Mm-hmm. So it sucks. Yeah, I'm a warrior. You can't be a warrior. Now I have to use the warrior to figure out how to get past the warrior. You know what I mean? You have to dive into that mentality. And for me, it was those drugs, that addiction. Those things were the biggest things that I was fighting because I had been around them since I was a child. My dad did it when I was a kid, all the way up till I was an adult. So that mentality, I had to break that, which is the hardest thing, trying to break an identity that you've resonated with for the last 5-10 years. It's insane. It's hard. It's hard, and it pushes us into spirals. With that being said, let's talk. What's that spiral?
Spirals, bro. For me, I felt like I didn't even know that now, looking back and reflecting what you just said, right? That warrior was being challenged. And for me at that moment, remembering to feel what I was feeling at the time is like that warrior was taken away from me. And then...
Which it never could. It feels that way.
Right. It felt that way. And then I had to like downgrade myself. And a lot of people don't understand... like the mentality when you're a 19, 20 something year old dude and you're making big life decisions, life or death decisions on a daily basis, and all of a sudden you can't even be in the military anymore, much less like having to downgrade. Yeah, had to take off the uniform,
take off the armor.
That's right. all the armor's off, and now what am I left with, right? And for me, it then became a process of really trying to understand what I was doing, what I was going through. And of course, I started learning and diving deeper into what post-traumatic stress disorder was all about, and these injuries, these diagnoses, all of these things I had now that I knew I was hurting, I knew I was messed up, because nobody drinks like that normally. But I had to start diving into these things, and really that became, kind of the recovery process. And in between being the bouncer and all these other adventures, kind of moving forward, it really became, I found that sense of service again in, number one, going through the process, like receiving from, select individuals like my father-in-law, who's a Vietnam Army Ranger. He definitely helped me kind of process things and like, hey, you need to go talk to this person over at the VA or whatever. And then, really started kind of diving in and seeing that, oh, you can be, more than what I'm feeling right now in this moment, right? Like he was a company owner, he owned his own business, and he, started looking at that and basically saying, okay, what can I do? Well, I found the service again in, okay, I started going through these processes, right? Like the disability compensation process, like getting, your service connection, all that stuff, going into education. I started going back to college and really kind of looking at all these different things, and then found when I got placed into this medical hold detachment, which was for what we called the land of the misfit toys. That's where all the injured, all the, wounded guardsmen went to for basically their medical out process. And I started finding other folks that were suffering, right? Because they were coming to the realization, oh shit, I can't be that warrior anymore. I can't do my job anymore. What the hell am I going to do? And I was like, well, I've already been through these processes. Let me go down with you, right? I'd take random guys. We'd run over to the VA, get them freaking at least their first appointments, connected up and stuff like that to get the process going. And then started learning more about the medical retirement process. Ran into guys like Michael Snook from Wounded Warrior Project that really stepped in and helped me out. And that in turn helped me help more of these guys that were, guys and gals that were in this this either discharge or retirement process. And I started learning about peer support. And I was like, okay, so this is folks that have been through some shit, helping other folks that are going and been through some shit that might just be a couple steps further along in the process than what this person is that's needing the help. And so I learned about being a peer support. The first time I did any kind of training when it comes to that was with Wounded Warrior Project, and they had, a peer support program that I went through and learned about all that. The first time I learned about mirroring was way back then, and I think about that now, and I didn't really use that skill because I was like, that's freaking stupid. But
but you indirectly
Right.
you did with the veterans you were helping.
But I did, exactly. And so learning to be a peer support and then helping others, and it started bringing me back to that sense of mission, right? Like I feel like my mission was taken away. I couldn't be that warrior anymore. Well, I can be a warrior in this aspect. I can help other warriors, right? Like I can be that kind of go-to guy that knows shit because he's been through stuff, right? Like been through the VA, been through all these different programs that are helping veterans and all this stuff. And I was like, all right, I think I can do something with this, and then started trying to create a nonprofit back then. It was called the Valkyrie Project. And as we know, like in mythology, right, the Valkyries come and pick up the honorable dead from the battlefield and take them to Valhalla. And so that for me was like, you know what, the Valhalla is what we got now, right? We're here in the United States. We're gonna be okay. We just need to freaking pick up the wounded and show them how to thrive in this environment. And so that became my new mission, and that led me to, I was trying to start up this nonprofit. It just wasn't coming off the ground, and I kept getting bugged by this other guy that was helping out vets too. His name was Alex Taylor. Ooh, that's a tough one still. Alex approached me and he was like, "Hey man, I work for this organization. It's a nonprofit. I know you're trying to get your thing off the ground and stuff, but you're wanting to do what we're trying to build." I was like, "Okay." And I kind of blew him off at first, and then found out that, I was kind of the only one out of the group of guys I was trying to start this thing with that was doing any of the work. No offense to them. They had their own shit that they were dealing with, right? So I called up Alex one day and I was like, "Hey, you still got that job offer?" And he's like, "Man, I've been waiting for this phone call." And then I started working for Impact Suicide Prevention Center. And that was a bigger part of La Frontera over here in Arizona, which is a big mental health organization. And he was like, what we're doing is what they call crisis transition navigation. So somebody is in a crisis. You then meet with them after the crisis has subsided and then try to get them stable in the community, right? It was a peer support position. And so I was like, you know what? I think I can do this. And so I started off as a community navigator, which I fucking hated at the time. I think about it now because I was having to work with everybody and anybody, right? It wasn't just veterans. But what he wanted to do, and he was like, I need your help building this thing, is I want to build, what you want to do with the Valkyrie project here, and it be that kind of crisis transition navigation format, but be veteran specific, right? So we started, and there was another guy that was on board as well, and we started creating Rally Point. And Rally Point was a concept from La Frontera, the main organization down in Tucson, and they basically wanted us to build on it, but with the crisis aspect of how to navigate somebody through those tumultuous times that they're in. And so I really started learning about crisis training, did suicide prevention training of all sorts. There's Safe Talk, there's Assist. I was doing more peer support training through the state, became state certified, and, had to do the fingerprint clearance card, all that good stuff, right? And actually became a part of healthcare. Right, and a provider of sorts. And so diving into that is where I really started kind of taking off with my mission, because I was like, man, I got ideas, right? Like I want to build our own, veteran specific mobile team that goes out to a vet, fuck the post-crisis stuff. I want to catch them while they're in crisis and get them stabilized, so
something that you were seeing the gaps. As a warrior who was facing a bunch of different things and going across all of these different organizations, you were seeing the gaps that would have made you feel unsafe. Mm-hmm. So you're like, yo, we need to cover these potholes up so nobody busts their tire when they're trying to get down this road.
Right. And seeing those gaps and then trying to fill in the best we could, right? Like there was. We started with a team of 2, really, when Rally Part started off, and doing these individual. We would just show up to folks' house in a minivan, and or on the street wherever they were at, and just try to figure out what was going on with them, what was causing the crisis. We started getting contacts from different police departments because the crisis system was all. Tied in with the National Call Center, right? So if somebody came in with suicidal ideation, on a phone call, they would direct them to local crisis services. So Impact was one of those responding agencies, and they already had mobile teams involved. And I was like, man, I really want to do that for vets. And so filling in those gaps, it was, and then we started getting flooded, right, with requests. We were at the VA almost on a daily basis, if we weren't at the VA, we were at all these other different community resources that were out there. And it really started with the National Guard and the unit that I ended up medically retiring out from. And it was just helping those folks through the process. We actually got an office at the National Guard base. There was just two of us working with the director of psychological health for the Guard at that point in Phoenix. And, we just really started going to all these different crazy events and everything else. And lo and behold, the Phoenix VA crisis happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that don't know about that, it was pretty nationally publicized all over the place that, there was this wait list and all this other stuff for folks. People were dying, waiting to get receiving care. And they ended up doing this town hall at the American Legion Post 1 in downtown Phoenix. And we started linking up and finding all these different folks like Kirsten Sinema, who at the time was a congresswoman, who is now a former state senator. And she really started engaging with us and our team, and we were receiving calls from her social workers. Hey, can you come out? We got this veteran constituent that is having these issues. Can you see what you can get them hooked up with? And it just really kind of blew up into the point where we ended up having I think it was a team of 7 navigators, a military liaison. We had our clinical supervisor who would make those kind of, very much so, like a social worker call, a clinician call on different things that, of course, not being a clinician, I could make those recommendations or anything like that. But we had that clinical oversight, and it became this big statewide craziness, right?
Yeah.
We had folks all over the dang state, and it was super cool. Super cool.
Yeah.
The thing I found out about peer support, and I knew because, of course, I struggled with my own addictions and everything like that, was there's always a chance that somebody's going to fall off the bandwagon, right? It's going to fall off the wagon, get trapped in some shit again. And have you ever heard the term or the phrase, being too close to see something? Mm-hmm. Or maybe not even wanting to see it. I started noticing that, Alex, my mentor, my partner that I was doing all this stuff with, started slipping. And we had actually been invited to the Courage Awards that took place in New York by Wounded Warrior Project. And that's when I first started noticing things changing. Mm-hmm. And we got back from that and, wasn't showing up for work as much. Then realized he had, he was in recovery from alcohol. This guy was a Wall Street freaking dude from New York, right? Mm-hmm. And taught me a lot, on that journey with him. And he ended up drinking himself to death.
Sorry to hear that, brother.
Yeah, that one still sucks. That one still is quite painful. That I'm realizing now. But that again stuck me into that point where I was spiraling again because I was like, holy shit, I don't...
This person just let go of that warrior ethos, so fuck it. Mm-hmm. Why should I hold mine up anymore?
Absolutely. And during that time, I had this firm belief that I was never going to go to the dark side of the force, right? That's what we called the VA at the time. And during those last 3 years, I really started getting hounded by this lady by the name of Melissa Meredix over at the VA that worked in the homeless clinic. She was like, I want you to come work for me. I want you to come work for me. I got a spot on the team. And of course, again, ignored for a long time until that happened. Are you noticing the pattern now?
Mm-hmm. Clearly you are.
Yep. And so, I'm just talking to me, right?
Yeah.
I was like, we started losing people at Rally Point. The program started really taking a shift. I tried to keep it afloat as a military liaison the longest I could, until I was just like, it got tough just showing up to work because my brother wasn't there. You know what I mean? And eventually I showed up one day at Melissa's office and I was like, "Hey, you still got that spot open?" And she was like, "You better not be bullshitting me." And I was like, "No." And so she started the process. Actually, one of the fastest hires at Phoenix VA. It was within, I want to say I got hired and badged in under, it was like right around the 30-day mark, which is unheard of. But she totally just backdoored that freaking, railed me right through the system, right? And it was funny because I was the last hire that she had before she transferred to a different VA. So started jumping into homeless services. I already knew a good bit of that from when I was working at Rally Point, and jumped into that, full steam ahead, and that created a whole nother peer support mission for me at the VA. I was like, what else can we do with this? And so then I started getting approached
Looking
by
for those gaps again.
Yep, and then got approached by a social worker over at the VA who was like our bigger boss that was in charge of the CRRC, which is Community Resource and Referral Center for homeless veterans. And he looked at me and he was like, "Hey, I want to offer you a job." And he's like, I really don't want to hire anybody else because of your background. And it was a peer support with suicide prevention. And apparently the VA didn't have any at that time. They built out the position. I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. But basically I got tasked out to working with a program that's here in the community called Be Connected from Arizona Military. Wow, I can't even say that right now. Arizona Coalition for Military Families. Thank you. Anyways, and basically helping them build out something similar to what we were doing at Rally Point. And the funny part is my old boss from Impact was at the table, right? Mm-hmm. So we started putting together and basically doing the statewide. It was kind of a very upstream look at suicide prevention, before a crisis happens. Yeah. How can we make sure that you're connected with all those resources that you need to be? And so it was really exploring all these different gaps. And what I found was, I just wasn't being, I still didn't feel whole. Mm-hmm. And of course, at that time, I was still very much so drinking. I was cheating. I was doing all kinds of fucked up shit in my personal life, on top of trying to be this image of this peer support that is now, recognized throughout the state, in some cases national level, and trying to hold this image up of what I created, but at the same time my life falling apart because I wasn't feeling complete, right? I wasn't feeling I had.
You had this skill from when you were a kid, right? You had this skill. You noticed the gaps within your life and your safety. You joined the military. Now I'm in the military and I'm going into combat. I'm doing all these different things. I'm this warrior. You're solidifying more of that identity. And then you get out. And when you get out, you feel all the gaps within yourself, and you see the gaps within the system because, like you said, you were maneuvering the system. You were learning the system, guiding veterans through the systems. You kept seeing those gaps. And as you kept seeing those gaps, you were trying to find ways to fill it. And it got all the way up into the point where that you were filling so many gaps for other people to make sure that they were good. You weren't aware of your own gaps within your own experience. You thought maybe,
Bingo.
Which is something that I've tried before, something that's happened to me before too. Like, if I keep filling all these gaps where there's problems, then I won't have any problems. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, we gotta look at those gaps within ourselves. Yep. And just to add one more thing to it, what was your MOS in the Army?
11 Bravo infantry.
Okay, what'd you do while you were in the infantry? When you were physically there, what'd you do?
I mean, you're trained to eliminate the enemy.
Eliminate the enemy.
Essentially what it is.
But even bigger than that, right? What leads us there? We have to learn how to clear houses. Mm-hmm. We got to search for those gaps, right? So that training, you went from a child noticing that there were gaps, but you wanted to do something, into the military that taught you how to find those gaps.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you less safe, right?
Yeah.
But it's conditioning us to look outside of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
for those issues, for those scary,
Broadening
those
that
fears.
awareness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's what you were doing at that point, is you were becoming more aware of, oh shit, I'm fucked up, and the ego comes forth, right? That peer support ego, that ego mixes in, and next thing you know, you're like, oh, but I'm peer support, so I have to be good. I have to be
Mm-hmm.
good. And then, like you said, we project this energy, we project this version of ourselves forward, like, no, like, I'm this guy, like, no, I'm peer support, nobody needs to know what's going on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big thing that veterans face as a whole, is we're trying to uphold this image that we've created within ourselves, and we don't want nobody to know what we're really going through,
Mm-hmm.
which is what sends us into our spirals.
Yep.
It's fucking crazy, bro. It's
It's wild.
crazy. But going back in track, yo, Army taught you. All right,
Mm-hmm.
this house is clear. Oh, there's somebody there. All right, now we need to make a movement, do a different thing. We got to adjust to it. And then that's what we're not doing so much in our own lives, is figuring out
Right.
how to adjust to the playing field we're on at that moment, or the battlefield at that moment.
Yep.
We're so
Didn't have
focused on the
anybody
main
telling
issue.
me what my objective was anymore, so I had
Yeah,
to figure out what the
yeah,
hell is my
you're a-
objective now.
And that's something that I tell my wife all the time, too. I'm like, yo, I'm a missile. Let me know what the mission is, and then I'll make it happen.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because sometimes it's hard for us to look around, and you've had that ability, though. That's a skill you've always had, is seeing those gaps within the system itself.
Yeah.
And within those gaps, like I said, we get caught up in fixing it for everybody else, that we don't fix it for ourselves.
And that was a big piece, It was, I thought I had done all the work I needed to do at the time. I had this ego about me that, I'm good to go. I could just muscle through whatever's going on. And,
I can
and that
ignore
was, of
the other
course,
shit.
Yeah, exactly. As long as I got this mission, I'm good to go. But of course, as you notice with this pattern we've been talking about, right? All of a sudden I got this mission, all of a sudden it feel like it drops, and then I got to change the location.
Yeah,
right?
well, that was your safety. When you got into this new place, that was your safety,
Yeah.
and the person that you depended on, right? Think about, like, grabbing onto a handhold and holding onto that handhold, and then one day realizing that handhold was rusted and it popped out from under you. Now I'm like, fuck, should I reach out for another one, or should I just
Right.
hold on to where I'm at?
And of course, holding on to where I was at just took me further down that spiraling loop, right? And definitely started drinking a heck of a lot more. Started getting mixed in with some folks I shouldn't have been mixed in. I got this concept of psychedelics a long time ago, that, maybe that's the answer, right? And of course, the guy I started linking up with, that we lived next door to for a little while, started taking me down some really weird. That was back when spice was a big thing, and freaking.
Spice was basically the synthetic weeds that were out
Yeah.
there. There was a good push for synthetic weeds, synthetic all kinds of stuff.
Messing with that, like taking massive amounts of pills for different psychedelic effects, as it was, but actually ended up frying myself out on it, all this other stuff. Like, just started really fucking up. And eventually it got to the point where, I got away from that situation. My wife gave me an ultimatum at that point. She was like, it's us or them. And at that time had the kiddo and my booger, Aurora, and it was just really that make or break moment where you got a decision to make, right? Which way are you going to go? And so, of course, climbed up out of that for a while and started really kind of diving into myself again. And unfortunately, at the time, of course, then I started indulging in like the weightlifting ego and all this other stuff. And again, from one influence to another, right? I was looking for somebody to be able to match energy with me, to be able to, be where I'm at with me.
I'm going to even go beyond that for you, bud. I'm going to even go beyond that. And and say that it was a different warrior you tapped into.
Yeah.
Now it's not, I don't have to have a gun and have a uniform. Now I have to make my body look that way. Right?
Yeah.
So now I have to
Yeah.
attain this physicalness of the warrior.
Yep. Gotta stay strong, gotta stay big, gotta stay protecting myself, right? And then of course that fed into another ego, which led to more cheating and all this other shit, and that kind of leads us to where we start meeting.
And before we get to that,
yeah, before we get to
that, before yeah, because yeah, but before we get to that, like you met this new person that was into psychedelics. You see that there's some kind of practical application for this medicine or this drug, let's just say, for sake of whatever. But you think that there's some kind of practical application, but the people that are guiding you in that way or guiding you in that direction are guiding you into more darkness within yourself, right? They're not telling you how to handle the darkness.
Right.
They're not helping you really achieve what you're looking for. Now your wife comes and she's like, "Yo, you're not filling your own gaps. You're over here filling other people's gaps and filling yourself in a different way."
Yep.
And you get into working out, and that that which, like I just said, creates this other mentality, this other badass mentality. Like, I work out, I'm gaining muscles. You know what I mean? I got tattoos. I look like this mean person. But once again, you are still trying to find ways to tap into that warrior mentality instead of going into the battle within yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it was I was always wanting to change, right? Change these patterns. I realized that they weren't working for me. But at the same time, I was getting into other patterns, right? I was getting deeper in, like what you said, not having that space held for me, but it was bringing me even deeper into darkness, and I realized that all the therapy and everything else that I went through, and I can't tell you how many different freaking therapies I've done, including EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization or reprocessing. I did, talk therapy, which I like to call emotional waterboarding. There's so many different, CBT. I did a bunch of different, including
a lot of frameworks.
A lot of frameworks, right? And nothing seemed to really click for me. Like I was gaining tools along the way, and a lot of the time I was able to employ those tools with other veterans I was working with, but still trying to figure out how to employ them for myself.
Yeah, the warrior doesn't want the Band-Aid.
That's right. Yeah, the warrior wants to be fixed so he can get back out on the freaking battlefield, I don't want a freaking temporary bullshit.
I don't need you to put a Band-Aid on me. Just tell me I'm good so I can go back out no matter how fucked up I am. Going back to like your experience in the Army, it's getting separated. Like, no, send me back out, motherfucker.
Yeah. And for me, I didn't find... I had that level of awareness where I knew how to find the gaps, but like what you were talking about, right? I wasn't filling those gaps for myself until...
Didn't know how.
Yeah, I didn't know how.
None of us know how.
No. And until I had our first experience, didn't have that level of awareness to where I was like, oh, you mean to tell me, talking to me, right? You mean to tell me I can employ all these tools for myself in a way that I don't have to, necessarily dive so aggressively against myself in this, right? I can actually be there for me. Oh, yeah, cool. I didn't realize I could do that, right? And that's the real psychedelic experience. Something that what it initially taught me, was that I remember when you handed me that bag of dried mushrooms, and you were like, "Hey, if you're gonna have an experience, you're gonna be on our level." And so I took them all, and had this awesome, amazing feeling of freedom. Right? It was freedom to just be completely in that experience, in the moment, and feel love and feel like all these different things that I had stacked up on my shoulders were just lifted off. right? All that weight was lifted. And, coming back from that experience, and that's the one Sarah says, to this day, my wife, by the way, for everybody listening, love you, babe. The change that she saw after that is the thing that stuck with her the most, So then she was totally fine with sending me on these camping trips,
Go hang out with that weird big dude again.
Yeah, go hang out with Demo, or every once in a while, you just going to do drugs. What more can you change? Oh, I've got a lot more I can change. So
and it's not even changing. It's like I need to learn.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I need to learn. There's so much more I need to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And, for other people, that's outside of them. They're like, what do you mean you need to learn? You're a good person. It's like, I'm a good person because I keep working on it. I'm not a good person. It ain't because I gave up working on it.
Right.
Like I have to keep working forward.
Yeah. I still got more patterns to discover that I've been living. But yeah, man, I think we ventured off, but
no.
I feel like
we're perfectly on point.
For me, that's when the spiral down started. The spiral got inversed, right? Instead of spiraling down this way for me and the path I was going, it was actually that flipped upside down and started spiraling more inward.
Yeah.
To where I started gaining more of that awareness of these patterns that I've been living, the reason that I'm making these decisions, the reason I'm reacting this way, and then of course, as we'll, I'm sure, talk about more of, it started getting more into mindfulness and everything else. And then all of a sudden, as I'm doing this suicide prevention peer support job, another door opens. Mm-hmm. And I meet this lady by the name of Karen White. And she's like, hey, I got another job for you that I think you're going to enjoy doing. And that's when I started coaching. Mm-hmm. And for me, of course, I had
coaching for those listening.
Yeah. For me, I had no idea what being a coach was all about. Like, right now, I played team sports, played football, I did wrestling. I knew what having a drill sergeant was all about. Right. So I knew that typical coach mentality of you're going to do what we say, you're going to train the way you do, right? You're going to eat this way, you're going to do this, you're going to work out.
Complete opposite, boy.
Right. And so she was like, well, this is a different type of coaching. You're just going to have to kind of take the training and figure it out. I was like, okay. So another big crux of timeline for me was I think that was actually right before we met. No, we had already met. And then I was in training at the time when the second experience came across. But anyways, we'd already met, had the first experience, and I dove into coaching and started trying to learn about that. And it was week one I got out of that training. I was like, I have no idea what these motherfuckers are trying to train me on right now. Like, this isn't like peer support, like where I'm looking for the problem and how to solve it, right? Mm-hmm. It was just being there to listen to what is space, right? What is space? What is this word they keep on using? And if no one knows what health and wellness coaching at the VA is all about, there's a program called Whole Health. And Whole Health is more the holistic side of the VA. It incorporates...
I am currently in the Whole Health program myself. I am working with a health and wellness coach, Amanda, that I've been working with for almost a year or so now, about 10 months or so. And it's been phenomenal. Like, everything we're talking about, going back to the main idea of this conversation, that space, like... I learned what space was with you. I didn't realize I was doing it for people. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that's just what I did for people. So if you're somebody out there who always has people coming up to them that just want to vent to you, that want to talk to you, telling you about different experiences in life, like, those people feel safe with you. You create a safe space around them. And with Beast and his first psychedelic experience with his other people, as opposed to coming and having his first psychedelic experience with me, and when I say with me, it was just us doing it together and me just holding space for him. You know, it was the space that was being held before. The space that was being held before, the energy that was holding up that space was an energy that made him feel more erratic, more out of control of himself. It took him out of his spirit and took him into his egos, into that warrior mentality. And once we got to know each other, he was able to go into those thoughts more because I let him. I had let him be in that space. He would ask me questions, and half the time I didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. But I'm going to answer it the best I can to make sure that he feels safe in that moment. So whatever he's going through, whatever he's processing in his dome at that time, he got stuck in a thought. You know, he got stuck in something that he kept thinking about. And I had to hold that space, just, hey, yeah, keep thinking about it. Keep thinking about it. What's there? What's there? What's there? You know, Sarah loves you. I didn't even know his wife at that time. But he was like, how's Sarah? I'm like, Sarah loves you. Sarah loves you. You know, whatever he needed at that time for me to make sure he was safe. It wasn't a lie. His wife was good to go. She was at home. She was with the kids. She was watching everybody, right? But I had to keep making sure that he felt safe in facing what he was facing for him to pull things out that he needed to see. Psychedelics are not something that's going to make you aware of everything. They'll make you aware of certain parts of yourselves, and it's up to you to keep working. But back to you, sir.
Yeah, and you know, learning about space, learning about reflections, learning about mirroring, all these other things, right? And you know, in between week 1 and week 2 of my training for coaching, I had a very large experience with you. And
What
that
you
was
wanted
one.
to.
Oh,
I want to
yeah.
put that out there. Is you saw that at that point right there, just to identify this for you, sir. At that point right there is when you said, "Oh, I see the gaps. I see my gaps."
Yeah,
I see
about
my
6
gaps.
months. Yeah, and to go into that even deeper, you know, 6 months prior, you know, we had just started really kind of talking about intentions, right? And so I set this intention. My main one that I had to focus on for like 6 months, even before we got into that experience, was I want to go all the way, right? Like I had watched this documentary a while back on DMT, the spirit molecule. I was like, I know that you can break through. Like there's this ego death process. There's all of these different things that folks go through. Like I want to go through my shit so that I can see what it's like on the other side of this, right? So I can see what it's like to be me. And going from week 1 of not knowing what the hell I was doing to having that experience, and that's exactly what happened during that experience, you know, was going through all of these different parts of myself. Some I had even forgotten, you know, that and our brain has an amazing way of protecting us, right? Our memories are locked away, and a lot of these experiences pull up a lot of those things that we put heavy shadow in and we stick in a corner in a box we don't want to look at, and our brain protects us from, you know, and started seeing all these different pieces of myself being shown to me, and having to basically be on display for everyone that was watching. You know, of course, this is in my experience. Nobody was, you know, seeing what all I was seeing during this, and going to the end of dying and coming out the other side is you know, just complete raw energy, and returning back. I learned in those moments, I came back with some tools after that experience that really helped me understand what I was being taught. And then from week 2 of coaching training on out, I just dove completely into it, right? I had this new awareness of space, right? I was like, oh, that's the space they were talking about, where I can just be on full display and be completely accepting, not needing to worry about being judged or anything else. I can just be raw, unadulterated me in a space that's going to provide safety for myself. Oh, I think I can replicate that for somebody else.
Absolutely. That is the perfect description of that space and what that space can do for fucking people. That is a perfect description of what that space does. And on top of it, like you said, you have that intention, right? like one time for me, you're talking about, you're in coaching, you had these experiences, you're in coaching, you're learning all these new ideas, you're learning all these new things. And through that ego death, right? And I'll talk about that in a second. But through the ego death, you were able to shed those portions of you that were distracting you from seeing those gaps within.
Yeah.
And also understanding that those gaps were okay to have at that
Mm-hmm.
fucking point, right? And
Yep.
and when we're talking about ego death, for some people it's different. I'm going to give you my perspective on what it is, and for me, it's a lot of us know we want to change if we're doing something bad, whether we're addicted to drugs or we're addicted to womanizing, to porn, whatever the case may be. We have parts of us that know we don't want to do it. When you get to that point, I'm not going to say it's going to happen if you don't want to do it. So if you're addicted to masturbating, like I've been in the past, like you can not want, yeah, you can not want to do it, or you can think to yourself, oh, this is bad, but you can keep doing it, right? But when you get to that place where you're like, yo, I don't want to do this anymore, and it's hard to stop it, those are perfect times to do psychedelics, because the ego death, what that does is it's not killing, it's a metaphorical death. It's a metaphorical death. We get used to doing certain things subconsciously or unconsciously, and that ego death essentially just gives a reset to that unconscious movement, that unconscious idea, those unconscious behaviors or reactions. It gives a reset for those, so then now you can look at that experience with your eyes, not the ego's eyes, right? So if I grew up in a house that's blue, the whole house is blue. That's what I'm used to. Every house needs to be blue. Every house needs to be blue. And if I walk into somebody's house, I'm like, why is your house not, look, and I'm talking about rooms blue, but why is your house not blue? Why is your house not blue, right?
Yeah.
Doing that psychedelic makes you understand that it's just your house that's blue. Not everybody's house is blue, and nor does it need to be.
Nope.
But back to you, sir.
Yeah. Ego death. Oof. That's an interesting concept. I from now what I think about it, and after the experiences that we've had together, each time going into that scenario, right, where you're being shown these different parts of yourself, these different gaps, these different, patterns that you've been living, each one has been different. Each experience has been different. Each time I've gone into it, it's shown me something different, because I feel like each time when I have had these experiences, it's whatever I need at that time, right? For me to be able to experience, for me to be able to gain an awareness of, to be able to show, oh, I need to hold space for myself in this moment, right? Because this is something that's presenting itself for me. And then be able to go into that, learn from it, because each of these things, not just with psychedelic experiences, but experience, period, right, is everything can be a tool. Everything can be made into something that you can use later on when you return to a similar scenario, a similar problem. You notice yourself start getting into a similar pattern. You're able to learn from those things and bring them to forward into the present, to be able to use and adapt in that situation that you need. So for each of those experiences, I was shown a new portion of myself. I needed to hold space for them, and each one of them gave me a new tool. So and able to bring that forward into that training and continue moving forward into it. And each experience is brought, including that last one we had,
Which we're going to have a whole fucking episode on that.
Oh yeah.
Boofo. That's it.
Yeah. It's a whole nother ball game. Respect. The tools that you bring forward from these different experiences and from life, and that's what I've been able to adapt into coaching, is like, hey, regardless of what you've been through, right, whether good, bad, or indifferent, you're going to be making emotional decisions based off of those experiences, right? That's in that subconscious realm of our decision making. And if we can become aware, then we're able to say, hey, you know what? The beast I created, right? That version of myself, that warrior that I created for myself. Oh, I can plug and play that right here, and I can use this to adapt in this situation. Like I'm currently doing right now is I'm re-engaging with this portion of myself that I created to not only say I love you and we're okay, and you don't have to have the armor on all the time, right? But the, being able to use it because that's where I first found my voice, right? That's where I first found that courage to be able to stand up.
Those tools.
Exactly.
And that's the thing about all those egos and those identities that we have within us. It's like they all pop up because there is a necessity for them. There's a necessity for them within our spirit, within our minds, and those other identities come forth with tools. And a lot of times we're not supposed to run around, permanently run around with these identities. We're supposed to, discard them as needed. And that's kind of what it sounds like you're saying too, is like you're going into those versions of yourself and you're giving them that love, right? Discard all the shit inside of you that I don't need, but I'm going to give you love to fill in what we don't need, and then we're going to work together.
Yeah.
And that's I think a big key, especially with these types of conversations right here, like holding space for one another while you're talking, and just through this conversation, you felt a lot of feelings, you've been through a lot of different things, your memories have been popping up, like emotions, everything, and having this conversation, watching you talk about your things, having emotions within me pop up, experiences within me, memories for myself are popping up, but the most important part of this is, for a long time, I felt alone in these thoughts. I felt like nobody else felt these things. So having these types of conversations, and this is why it's so important for me to do what I'm doing right now, is having these types of conversations show more people that, like, regardless of what, our lives are completely different. Our lives are completely different. The way I grew up, my time in the military, my time post-military, our lives are completely different. But being able to resonate with somebody and connect with somebody at that emotional level, so you're able to hold space and feel more normal, right? Like you can open up and talk to me about anything. You know that. You can come up to me and tell me anything that you got going on in your life, and I'm just going to hold you down. I'm going to reflect some things.
Yep.
I'm going to learn some shit for myself, and I'm going to go through the rest of my day like, fuck, I didn't even realize this about myself. You know what I mean? But it makes me feel more normal in my experience. Yeah. And I think that's such a big importance when it comes to veterans as a whole across the U.S. and for civilians to understand within the veteran population, right? There's these different stigmas of veterans. Oh, they just think they're a badass. Oh, they're just mean. Oh, they're just hard. And it's just because we're afraid to be soft around you, because we don't think you're going to hold us down the way we need to be held down. You know what I mean?
I don't feel like I can be safe around you. Right?
No, and that's what the civilians in the world need to understand about veterans. It's like, we don't need you to understand what we've been through. We just need you to understand that we feel things too.
Yep.
And the reason why you see us the way you see us is because we feel things too. And
we're just over in our little armor.
Yeah.
Running around trying to feel safe.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'm going to start winding down now towards the end of this one, sir. But, bro, I've learned some things about you today that I did not know in the past. One that I want to laugh at is ROTC. But
ROTC.
It's only because I wanted to join, but they wouldn't let me join ROTC when I was in high school. Yeah, I know. They were like, yeah, like my guidance counselor was like, I'm not putting you in that. You're going to go take auto mechanics. Go.
Dang.
So, yeah, that was my experience, which I understood. Maybe I wasn't disciplined enough at that time for me to join that and do that thing. You know what I mean? But I learned a lot about you in this conversation, bud. There's a lot that I've known already. And when we think about leveling up, it's learning something so we can get to the next level. And you, sir, aren't even in the same fucking building anymore. Your building has superseded anything that you could imagine. The stairs that you have through conversations that we've had together is closer to God. It's closer to those things that we're trying to be more for ourselves. But I wanted to tell you that you're no longer in that same building anymore. The building that you've created is creating a staircase for your kids to lift themselves up beyond. You know what I mean? I had the honor of having a good conversation with my father before he passed away, and like through that conversation I realized that our paths are a lot alike, And especially now in life, in the direction that I want to go. When I was talking to him, it was really hard conversation, but I was like, yo, I'm where you're at right now. Like what you want to create for yourself and for your community is where I'm at right now, and I'm only half your age. And I want you to understand that your kids are seeing that. They're seeing you change. They're seeing you work on yourself, right? And by the time they get to your age, they're going to be beyond where you're at. The generational traumas that you've healed through creating your own new building, sir, is immense. I'm proud of you. I hope you're so proud of yourself. It's been amazing knowing you, and I can't wait to see what else we do together, brother.
Bro, as we always say, right? We've already been in it. Mm-hmm. We're just continuing on the path.
Yes, sir.
And walking with you, bro, yes. I thought I knew God growing up. But since diving in and really understanding that love, that space, that vibration, that energy, it's a completely different ball game. Completely
Amen.
Different world.
It's a new building, brother.
Yep. Yeah. Quite the facility that's being put together and being built. Continuing
being identified.
to be. Mm-hmm.
Being identified. We already have it. We already are it. It's just we're identifying of those skills and tools and the energy within us to continue cultivating that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, my brother.
Ooh, buddy.
Well, once again, to everybody else, this is David the Beast Donaldson. He will be on a few more times, I'm sure, quite a bit. We'll probably even attack a few interviews together at some point, which is going to be fucking amazing. But it's been an honor talking to him today. And once again, this is I Am Just Talking to Myself. My name is Kris Demo Demerizzi. You guys have a great rest of your day.